Welcome to Socials with the Saints. Are you looking for hope and inspiration? Grab a cup of tea or your favorite beverage and spend some time with us as we meet role models throughout church history and discuss how they can help us in our daily pilgrimage of life.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to Socials with the Saints. Our mission is to inspire you in your daily pilgrimage of life by introducing you to the Communion of Saints. I'm Angela Sealana, Media Coordinator for Pilgrim Center of Hope, a Catholic ministry founded in 1993 with a mission of helping you walk your journey of daily life in hope with Christ and the Church. Socials with the Saints are opportunities to learn from role models of faith and from one another for fellowship, prayer, and receiving spiritual tools. Today, we will be shining a light on Korean martyr St. Barbara Ch'oe Yeong-i and her family. We are recording this podcast as a resource for those of you who could not attend our in-person Socials with the Saints gatherings. You are more than welcome to join us on the third Thursday of every month in San Antonio, Texas. Visit pilgrimcenterofhope.org for more information about our in-person Social with the Saints gatherings. Have you ever heard of St. Barbara Ch'oe Yeong-i or the stories of how the Korean Christian community came to be? St. Barbara Ch'oe Yeong-i was born around the year 1819 in present-day Seoul, South Korea. She died February 1st, 1840 in Dangoge, Seoul. Her feast day is February 1st. She is also celebrated with the Martyrs of Korea on their general feast day of September 20th. While most people outside the Middle East have adopted the Christian faith due to missionary work, there is one nation that did not need missionaries: Korea. How did this come to be? Korea's rich cultural history is marked by its roots in the teachings of Chinese philosopher and politician Confucius. One may argue that Confucianism is less of a religion and more of a secular social morality teaching, although it does refer to heaven and the afterlife. A very basic presentation of the major principles of Confucianism would include 5 concepts: the virtue of consideration for others, the virtue of benevolence, the virtue of honesty, the virtue of propriety and ritual, and the virtue of learning. Education has played an essential role in traditional Korean society. As opposed to Japan, whose traditional power structure, the shogunate, was based upon war and the might of a clan, the Korean ruling class for centuries were the Yangban, deriving from the Confucian scholar. Another aspect of Confucian and Asian culture is the centrality of family, known as the virtue of filial piety, or respect for one's parents and ancestors, and for hierarchies within society. Thus, Korean names are presented with the family name first, in this case, Ch'oe, and then the individual person's given name, which itself is often a generational family name. In our case today, Yeong-i. So St. Barbara Ch'oe Yeong-i, Barbara being her Christian name, Ch'oe, her family name, and then Yeong-i, her given name, or what we in the West would say her first name. Diplomat and scholar Yi Seung-gwang first encountered Christianity while in nearby China. He returned to Korea in 1603 with several theological books written by Father Matteo Ricci, who was a Jesuit missionary to China. As was the Yangban custom, Yi passed on to his fellow scholars this interesting information that he had obtained about Christianity. By 1758, the king declared Christianity to be an evil practice. Later, in 1783, a Yangban, who was named Yi Seung-un, traveled to Beijing with his father on a diplomatic mission. While on the trip, he made contact with Catholic priests about whom he had read. He chose to be baptized in 1784, and returned to Korea with books, crucifixes, and other Catholic artifacts. Once his Yangban elder, Lee Byuk, was fully convinced, Lee Byuk allowed Sung-un to baptize Lee Byuk as well as other Yangban and other folks. So Sung-un, who was still a layman, soon established the first Catholic houses of prayer in Korea. Now, at the time, Korean class structure was very clear. Even today, the Korean language's historical roots are evident in what is called honorific terminology. When you're learning the Korean language, you learn to address someone who is older or more distinguished than yourself with different grammar than someone who is an equal to you or who is younger. Gender also adds an additional level of linguistic complexity. So we have these varied levels of importance and honorific terminology in the Korean language that relate to Korean class structure, etc. Therefore, meetings of Korea's early Christians were astonishing to behold. Sitting in the same room together were scholars, tradesmen, women, and even slaves, regarding each other with equal dignity. Koreans' search for truth led them not only to a surprise meeting with Jesus, but to radically alter the ways they lived norms which were the very fabric of their society. Women and commoners were among the grassroots leaders of the early Korean Christian movement. Christians in large numbers also began rejecting the Confucian ancestor rites, which regarded ancestors as akin to gods. The first martyr, Thomas Kim Bomu, was killed in 1785. It wasn't until 1795 that the very first ordained priest arrived in Korea from China at the request of Korean Catholics. Even though it had been a relatively short time since the first Korean had been baptized, the local church had grown to over 4,000 members without a single priest. In 1801, a Christian named Ch'oe Yeong-i was martyred. His brother, Peter Ch'oe Yeong-hub, was heavily burdened. The two had lost their father when Peter had been 13 years old. After his brother's martyrdom, the family went bankrupt. Peter left the practice of Christianity and lived apathetically for many years. However, around 1815, he returned to the Christian community and grew in his faith. He wondered whether martyrdom would be the only way that he could make amends for his former ways, and he desired to die for Christ. At age 30, Peter married Magdalena Son Sobyok, whose family had also been affected by Christian persecution. They gave birth to their firstborn, a daughter, in 1819, and named her Yeong-i. Her Christian name was Barbara. Afterward, Magdalena bore 9 more children who all died in infancy. The family survived a cholera epidemic, and amidst all these trials, gained a reputation as a faithful and holy family. Finally, after about 20 years of hardship, Magdalena bore another baby girl. The Ch'oe family had Catholic objects in their home, discovered by local authorities in the summer of 1839. By this time, Magdalena's miracle baby was just 2 years old. Barbara had married and was nursing a newborn son. Her husband, Charles Cho Shin-chol, had been a great match for her zealous faith and desire to marry an intelligent man. He had contributed much to the spread of Christianity by helping priests enter the country, serving as an interpreter, and teaching the faith. In the spring of 1839, while away from home, he had seen Christ in a dream, who twice told him, "This year I will give you the grace of being martyred." As he arrived home from his trip, he discovered that his family had been captured. He immediately went to declare that he had been the leader of the recently seized Christians, and that it was he who had brought Christian objects into their home from Beijing. Authorities bound his arms and legs, hung Charles from a beam, and beat him. Yet he remained steadfast. Magdalena and Barbara were jailed together, having kissed their little children goodbye and entrusting them into relatives' care. The jail conditions were filthy, without sunlight or adequate food. The women were beaten with canes more than 260 times and tortured by Ch'oe, a practice of tying together prisoners' knees and feet while pulling apart their shin bones. This was done in hopes that they would betray Christianity and give up the names of fellow believers. They both refused. Barbara told officials, "I would rather die than betray the Lord." Her mother said, "If God did not give me help, with my own strength I would not be able to endure even the bedbugs or fleas which burrow into my flesh and eat it. Only God can give the strength to endure pain." Her brave son-in-law, Charles, along with a local bishop and priest, were jailed together and tortured for 3 more days before receiving the death sentence. As it was time for Charles to board the cart that would transport him to his execution site, he told the jailer, "Please tell my family that I will go to heaven first and wait for them, so everyone must be brave and follow me." As he was unloaded from the cart, he noticed some relatives among the crowd and smiled at them. He was beheaded on September 25th, 1839. Meanwhile, his father-in-law Peter was also tortured and interrogated, a total of 7 times in his 7 months of captivity. As he was taken to the site of his execution, he told the guard, "Go and tell my wife and daughter in the female cell not to mourn my fate. It is a feeling that is too human, so it's not fitting for a true believer. Instead, praise the Lord and give thanks to the Lord for giving me such great grace. And don't forget to tell them to follow, come with me." He continuously prayed on the journey to the site. On December 29th, 1839, Peter was beheaded at the small west gate of the city, where prisoners' severed heads were displayed. In this grim place, plans were underway for the Lunar New Year festival, and merchants expressed concern about the effect of the executions on their sales. So the execution site was moved to Danguge, a traditional Buddhist temple site, where Magdalena was beheaded on January 31st, 1840. Adding to the mental torture of having lost her family members, Barbara's execution was delayed until the next day due to a law preventing family members from being executed on the same day. She wrote in a letter, "My parents and my husband have all died as martyrs, so how can my mind be peaceful? However, when I think of heaven, I am greatly consoled, and I thank God for this grace." Barbara was executed at Danguge, which is often referred to as the Mother's Shrine. 6 women were martyred there, among them 3 who had borne children. Most of the saints martyred there were related by family to one another or to the saints who perished at the Sosumun, the small West Gate Martyr's Shrine. Today, Danguge Martyr's Shrine tells the story of its martyrs by growing wild roses, which in Korean flower symbolism signify longing for loved ones, as well as fragrant plum blossoms, which signify courage amid hardship, purity, and renewal. The Catholic Church in Korea continues to grow, and has been a main driving force behind activism for social justice and against government corruption. South Korea provides the world's second largest number of Christian missionaries, second only to the United States. Wow, what a story. Here are a few questions to ponder. What struck you about what you just heard? What stood out to you in the story? How does the life of this saint teach and challenge you in your spiritual life? What lesson will you take with you from this saint into your daily life? We'd like to continue this conversation with you. Please share your thoughts and reflections about this saint by leaving a comment on the YouTube or Facebook post that corresponds to this episode, the podcast app you listen to this episode on, or you can send us an email, ministry@pilgrimcenterofhope.org. We look forward to seeing what you have to say, and maybe you'll hear your name on next month's episode. You can download a printable pamphlet with this story, as well as a card with a quote from our saint, on our website, pilgrimcenterofhope.org. The link will be included in the podcast description. That quote is, "When I think of heaven, I am greatly consoled, and I thank God for this grace." St. Barbara Ch'oe Yeong-i, pray for us. Thank you for joining us on Socials with the Saints. We invite you to come visit Pilgrim Center of Hope and learn more about our threefold ministry of pilgrimages, conferences, and media outreach. Visit pilgrimcenterofhope.org or call us at 210-521-3377. That's 210-521-3377. Socials with the Saints podcast will continue in this simple storytelling and meditative manner for the first half of 2023. Please make sure to stay up to date with details about these wonderful events. You can do so by liking our Pilgrim Center of Hope Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our email list by visiting our website, pilgrimcenterofhope.org. Until next time, remember, we are Pilgrim people, and on your journey, you are never alone in the communion of saints. May God bless you.